My name is Graham Lawler, and I'm the founder of Ultralight Startups.
Woo!
Thank you. So we're here to talk about PR, branding, and buzz today, and we have a panel of esteemed experts that John, our moderator, is going to introduce in a moment. And I will just say why I am interested in PR, branding, and buzz. I have been doing PR for some time, for maybe a year, in a very ultralight manner for ultralight startups, and that entails drafting a press release and sending it to a lot of reporters. And I've had some success with that. I got an interview in Entrepreneur magazine, which is probably the highlight of that process. I've also got coverage in such periodicals as the Richmond Times-Dispatch and the Central...
Richmond, Queens? No.
I think it's in Virginia.
Oh.
In Virginia. And Central Valley Business Times. So that's obviously on par with the Wall Street Journal and that kind of publication. So, PR clearly is something that is important to know about, and generating traffic to your site. If you're an ultralight startup and nobody's ever heard of you and you're just launching, how do you get your name out there, and how do you get people finding out about you? I have to confess that until recently I thought PR stood for press relations, and maybe I'm the only one that thought that, but as it turns out, I was informed recently that's not what it stands for. It stands for public relations, which almost even is a bigger puzzle to me, because then it's like, who is the public, and why do we write so many press releases? So I guess we're here today to learn from this panel about that space and how you can achieve success as an ultralight startup with PR, branding, and buzz. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our moderator today, who is a very good friend of mine, and you will have seen, if you've been to any ultralight event in the past at least 6 months, if not 8 months, covering and blogging and twittering for us. So John Adams is the founder of BizBriefs, a strategic social media content planner and consultant who guides companies through the Web 2.0 arena while providing meaningful content. John was most recently the director of editorial services for Storm Exchange, a news source for weather-driven business, where he produces podcast, radio pieces, and industry news stories. John is also a blog designer with extensive journalism experience who has reported, produced, or anchored for various media outlets including NBC Universal, Institutional Investor, Cox Enterprises, and Media General. So we are honored to have John Adams here moderating our panel on PR, branding, and buzz. So welcome, John.
It always sounds more impressive when he says it. We're going to start off with our panel. We're going to start with Lloyd Trufelman. Lloyd, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. I run a PR firm called Trilon SMR, as in Strategic Media Relations. We've been around since before the dot-com boom. We focus pretty much exclusively on media/digital media, technology, and telecom clients. So, for example, we don't have expertise in things like, I don't know, food or indicted politicians or stuff like that. And we've worked with, over the years, large companies ranging from launching things like, if you remember, Court TV and Home and Garden Television and MSNBC.com and Drugstore.com. We've worked with a lot of startups. And at the end of the day, our job is to find ways of helping companies boost their brand and visibility in a fast and, most importantly, credible manner.
Great. And next on our panel is Carl Schmieder. Carl.
I'm the founder of Messaging Lab. We're a naming and marketing communications firm, and PR is one of the strategies that we use to help our clients get people interested in our clients. We also work mostly in the healthcare space. That's about 80% of our client base. 20% is tech. In the naming front, we usually work with large companies, so we've worked with Yahoo and Logitech and Sony and companies like that. Healthcare, really the A to Z of biotech companies. I think one thing worth saying that we'll probably address is that in general, nobody really gives a shit about your company, and so it's really up to you to make them care. And there's a process that you can go through to make that happen, and PR is one really cost-effective way to get people interested in your company.
I care about your company.
Thank you.
As you can tell, we don't have a censor tonight, but
I apologize. One of the 10 words you can't say on the radio.
Rachel Honig.
My head is really big on that screen. I'm Rachel Honig. I am managing director of a public relations agency called GS Schwartz & Company, and also COO and co-founder of our digital marketing arm called Digital Power and Light. Why have one job when you can have two, as so many of you in this room probably already know. GS Schwartz & Company is a 30-year-old traditional public relations agency. We work across a variety of industries. We have business-to-business clients, we have consumer goods and services clients, we have technology clients, we have financial services clients. Somebody in the pizza said, well, that means you do everything. And it sort of sounds that way, although we don't do celebrities or indicted politicians or a lot of healthcare or some other areas. We have been working in the .com and the internet since its inception. Probably our greatest asset in the firm, other than our people, is our URL, which is schwartz.com, which just lets you know exactly how long we've been in the internet space. If you look in the phone book at a lot of Schwartzes, that'll make sense to you. Personally, I'm very involved in advocacy for the industry. I chair the Women Executives in Public Relations, and I sit on a board at Baruch. We work not only with startups, but I've actually sat in meetings at the State Department trying to help the U.S. government figure out how to help our reputation online or just in the world. And I think actually that might be a little easier sometimes than working with startups, but that's me.
And last but not least, Todd Barish.
Nice to see everybody. I'm Todd Barish. I work at Launch Squad Public Relations. We make a living caring about your company. Launch Squad, as you can probably tell by the name Launch Squad, that's really very telling in our expertise. We like to find young companies, launch them to the world. We like to find mature companies and launch their products. We specialize in technology, new media, telecom, wireless, internet. We approach things very strategically. We like to break down business models to the core. We like to not just look at your company and what you're trying to do. We're really strategic messages, and we take those messages out to the world in a very targeted fashion to get press, to create a brand, and then ultimately to accomplish your objectives as a business.
Great. Todd, since we're with you right now, can you start off by giving us a quick definition of what PR means to you?
Yeah, sure. So to me, or to and to us as Launch Squad, it's practicing and creating, or the practice of creating and managing and implementing a communications campaign between an organization and the many publics that it serves to as many outlets and markets that are appropriate.
Rachel?
It is not press relations or press release. Sometimes people ask me the difference, and I think this is probably a good way to define the difference between public relations and advertising all the time. In fact, I have a lot of clients who hire me on full-time retainer basis, and they don't always know the difference. Public relations, in a nutshell, is why you believe a restaurant review more than you believe an ad by that restaurant. If you think about a restaurant telling you in their advertisement that they make the greatest lasagna on the planet, versus the reviewer telling you that it was, creamy and spicy and tons of garlic, and suddenly you're there to go. It's that third-party validation that's provided that extra edge. And so we utilize the media essentially to provide that third-party validation. So if Walter Mossberg says your consumer electronic is the best thing since sliced bread, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people are going to go buy that technology versus you just saying it yourself.
I would just add, I was going to say the third-party validation thing, but it's not just media, it's also having people talk about you. And then PR is really part of, to me, part of a bigger marketing strategy. So marketing is creating desire to potentially buy your product, whereas PR is having people talk about it or having the media talk about it.
I'd also go for the external third-party validation. Again, use a restaurant as an example, same thing as a movie. You see an ad or a trailer for a movie that might interest you, then you'll look at the review to try and get an opinion. And interesting is that all the advertising that movie companies do are basically excerpts of the review. The nice thing about that is the interesting thing about that is that we're now in this fragmented multimedia marketplace, and everyone's going, oh, the Twitter, blogs, Facebook, new media, traditional media. At least the way our company pays attention to it, there's no difference between any of them anymore. The idea of having a new media strategy and a conventional media strategy is akin to trying to book somebody on the radio and saying, well, we need an AM strategy and an FM strategy. It's a whole big mashup now, and the idea is to find the best tool and the best platform at the end of the day to generate that third-party credibility, whether or not it's a review by Walter Mossberg or whether or not it is a nice post in TechCrunch or having Scoble tweet about you. Whatever the platform is, it's just getting other people to say that what you're doing is good or interesting or fun or delicious.
And talking about that and that mashup now, what would be a do-it-yourself for a startup? What would be can I get a do-it-yourself tip from each panelist?
We're going back down that way now?
Let's go in the middle. Let's start with Rachel.
Call an agency. The first thing to do, I think, for do-it-yourself, and it does sound sort of self-aggrandizing to say it's tough to do yourself. But the reason all of us exist is because you're busy starting your businesses. But it's that third-party validation. So whoever the entrepreneur was who said you have one task, which is to go and send this link to all of your friends, it's that third-party validation. When I started in this business, social media didn't exist. But I think probably the best way to start a do-it-yourself strategy right now is a social media strategy, is to take like-minded entrepreneurs and people within your vertical, both of whom will care about your company deeply because they're going through the same thing or have similar interests, and just continue to get that word out there, whether it's Facebook or Twitter. And that'll start that momentum until you've got a little bit more of a grounding for a solid media or public relations campaign.
So Carl, if you're just starting Messaging Lab today, it's day one. What's the first PR tactic or first PR step you're going to take?
Get myself on a panel at ultralight startups.
And
I think making yourself an expert, and it plays off of what Rachel was saying. And I think identify the other people in your vertical, get onto their blogs, pay attention to what they're saying. Listen carefully, make intelligent comments, get yourself known among them, and then get on a panel.
Aside from getting on the panel, Lloyd.
I'm a big fan of DIY because not only am I a PR person, but I'm also a business owner. I started our company with a desk about half the size of this in a friend's loft, and I know what it's like, the fun, the thrill, the terror of starting a business and running a business. And of course, at the end, two enemies are money and time. So especially nowadays, there's so much DIY. I mean, you could be a DIY PR person. You write up a press release and you put it out on a wire, and thousands of people get it. You can be a DIY attorney. You just go and incorporate online. You can file your taxes for your company on TurboTax. Although I certainly don't. I don't think too many people here would file their corporate taxes solely by using TurboTax. They would probably want to sit down with an accountant. If they were incorporating, yes, you can incorporate online, but let me spend a little money and have a lawyer take a look at this just in case. The same thing with PR. Of course, it goes by the given that you have to know what you're talking about. You do have to have a story to tell. It has to be newsworthy. But there was something that Graham and I were going back and forth on the ULS blog. It was with the post that Jason Kalkanis put out several months ago about how you don't need a PR firm. Jason is a funny, smart, brilliant, rich guy, and he spent years promoting very heavily Silicon Alley reporter to everything from the content. He had the Bulldog. He walked around town. He was a very shrewd promoter. A lot of people here are terrific code writers, but not very good promoters. So the question is, you have to sit down and say, what can I do myself? How much money do I have? What am I good at? And what do I need to outsource to whether or not it's a PR firm, a freelancer, or hiring someone? Because, with due respects to the automated process, kidding aside about Richmond, Virginia, using automated services it's a tactical thing. It's like going to Monster and saying, well, I went to Monster and I sent my resume to 5,000 people. So I went to this thing, I pressed a button, I sent out my press release to 5,000 reporters.
Yeah, those things give a kind of a false sense of security or a false sense of getting things done.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Google and you say, hey, we're going to be announcing the Droid phone next Tuesday, and you put it out on one of these wires, of course your phone's going to light up like a Christmas tree. But if you're an unknown company and you send out 5,000 press releases, it's just delete, 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 delete. So that's the real thing as a business owner with everything. Coding, marketing, rent, equipment. What can I do for myself? What can I afford? And what do I need outside experts in? And that's something that really has to come from your gut.
I would definitely say it's about creating a story with a strong message. I mean, we believe that we're storytellers, and story can go across many vertical markets, but it's that message that becomes so important, and the consistency of that message. You know, all the people that stood up here tonight, I would be curious if they came back tomorrow and how they sound talking about their company and if there was any consistency. Because brands are created based on repetition and consistency. So the first thing you have to do as a small company, I think, is create that message and understand how you're talking about yourself to your multiple audiences. And then I would say also, of course, you need to define the audiences that you want to talk to. Who's most important? You know, there's lots of audiences. We all know what's going on in the long tail, but you know, you can't be all things to everybody. You need to really define those audiences. I think businesses today also have to have, especially the CEOs of businesses, they also have to have an opinion in the macro market. What's not just happening in your company, but why does your company fit into a bigger play? If you're a search company, why are you in search when there's Google? You have to have answers to that. You need to really think through that. Social media, I think, is interesting. We look at social media as a two-pronged approach. It's what I call in front of the screen and behind the screen. In front of the screen is your Twitter and your Facebook and all the things you need to do. Behind the screen is, if you put a video up on YouTube, it's the way you're tagging it. And the way you're tagging it is based on your messaging, right? Because you want to get people reading what they see in front, but you also want to capture audience, people that are searching, right? And search comes from tag because you have to understand the algorithms, the way that Google works. And then the last thing I think is interesting, you know, for years, our profession in PR, we would be pitching stories and we would hope the story gets written. But today, because there's so many outlets, there's so many blogs, there's so much consolidation in media, today in a lot of cases, not for the bigger outlets, we write the story ourselves, literally write the story ourselves and actually shop the story. So that way our messaging is on target, we're hitting the audiences that we want to hit, and we're going after the people that we want to see or that we want to see our message.
Okay. Shifting gears just a little bit, Carl, why don't you give us a PR horror story?
I think people who, I can tell you companies that I've worked with that are half-baked ideas that want to start to go out and get PR, and that never really works. They want to get a release out there as soon as possible. They haven't gone through the steps of coming up with a consistent message and really knowing what they want to tell people, understanding who their audience is. And those kinds of clients, while sometimes it can work, in general it doesn't really work.
Okay. And I went a little off kilter in my excitement over this. We're going to go a little bit to the overview we have. Why PR and measuring the return on investment. Rachel, why don't you start with that?
Sure, give me the tough question. Well, the PR is probably one of the most cost-efficient, well, until social media climbed along. PR was really the truly cost-efficient marketing vehicle. If you think about, other than the gentleman who told us we can buy, 3 a.m. television for $300, you think about the cost of actually spending on traditional advertising, you're looking at $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, $100,000. We're getting into, Super Bowl advertising season now. You're going to hear, some pretty extreme numbers floating around. Public relations is incredibly cost efficient because you're able to take the same message, send it to lots of different people. It's also a challenge because you can't always place exactly the story you want when you're going to want it. But for instance, we had a client this week on the Today Show for 5 minutes and 40 seconds. You can't buy 5 minutes and 40 seconds on the Today Show. Not because you can't afford it, there's just not even a vehicle to be on the Today Show for 5 minutes and 40 seconds because there's no such thing as a 5-minute advertisement or television advertisement, forgetting whether you could actually afford it or not. So public relations actually allows you to be relevant in the news, engaged in a story, and actually get more time, and thus making it incredibly cost effective. So that's when we look at measurement, we typically look at it against advertising equivalencies because we don't really have another measurement. But that's, do I spend my money in bucket X or bucket Y?
And your answer basically covered the next point as well. So Lloyd, we'll go to you for generating traffic versus converting the traffic to sales.
Well, the converting the traffic to sales, it reminds me of many years ago I was doing music PR, and our job, or my job at the time, was to get as many people into the hall as possible to hear the set. I couldn't make them applaud though. It was really up to the band, There are plenty of times where you can do a great PR campaign, and you come to the site, and the UI doesn't work, or the transaction doesn't go through. So converting traffic into sales just really boils down to, if you have a lot of traffic and your site is working, X percentage of it, whatever formula that's going to be there, is going to generate into sales. Generating traffic, again, it goes back to what was just said about reach. And again, the key thing is the difference between advertising and PR is that we don't believe in advertising equivalency. Because if I handed everybody here an article from today's New York Times and said, how many people thought this was a good article? How many thought it was a bad article? You'd have different opinions. You'd have different feelings. But at the end of the day, it's a credibility thing, and you can't measure credibility. One is qualitative, one is quantitative. PR is jazz, it's improvised. Advertising is classical music. Every note can be measured. So going back, for example, what Joseph said, social media, we're into that, it's great, it's fine, but you get somebody on the Today Show for 5 minutes, you get a nice piece in the Wall Street Journal, you get something popping about one of your clients in Gawker, and your servers are going to fry. So it's not either or, it's all of it. And the more exposure you get on the wider circulated credible media, whether or not that's print, television, blog, about.com guide, whatever it is, that's really the name of the game. And the more people that follow those particular media channels, the more people you're going to get to the site. And the thing is, as you know, nobody buys one ad, right? If there was one answer to what's the thing that drives all the traffic, then all other media would, let's say the Super Bowl. Every time we buy a Super Bowl, it accomplishes 100% of our marketing objectives. Then every other advertising vehicle in the country would evaporate. You don't know. Maybe some radio, maybe some social media, maybe a publicity stunt, maybe speaking on a conference panel, maybe having a guy on the street handing out flyers. It goes back to many years ago that John Wanamaker, it's a cliche, but it's true. He always said, I know that 50% of my marketing budget works, I just don't know what part of it does. And
Question?
That's the buzz.
So you're comparing the ROI of PR to advertising.
I'm not.
Well, okay.
John was.
I thought that's what I heard from Rachel. For us, for an ultralight, the advertising that we're likely to buy might be AdWords, let's say on Google, which you can buy in very small increments, $10 worth or $100 worth. So how much PR can I get for $10 or $100, or what's the PR equivalent to that?
Graham, the thing with AdWords and SEO is SEO helps if you're looking for something. If I'm looking to buy a toy blimp, right, and I'm a toy blimp manufacturer and I want to make sure my site is optimized and I'm buying my keywords, but the point of advertising and PR and all marketing is to create demand. A good PR campaign will get lots of people, or a good marketing campaign will get lots of people to say, gee, I guess I need a toy blimp. And then when they go to Google to look for a toy blimp, the toy blimp company will be properly optimized. So again, they're different, it's cats and dogs in some cases.
Go ahead.
I'm offering an MBA for $6,000 online. I want to know if I can have a relationship with one of you, similar to with my law firm, where they defer my billing in exchange for some equity until we reach a certain amount of revenue. And would a large PR firm like you consider that because we're startups, we have probably more equity than cash right now. So is there a way we can actually work together?
We do that all the time. Yeah, but again, we're Launch Squad, right? So we're looking for early companies that we believe in. And if we believe in them and we understand the model and we think that there's good potential in a market, we'd be willing to talk about that.
Okay, good to know.
Good.
Anyone else?
Yes.
We have done that from time to time. It's all dependent on the individual's circumstances.
Yeah, same here.
We would do a combination. My staff tends to like to eat, though, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard quite a lot of praise for the mainstream media, getting on the Today Show and such. I'm wondering if you might be very practical and tell me, how would you pitch, there's TechCrunch, how would you pitch Mike Arrington if you wanted him to write about you, or Walt Mossberg? Tell us, be really practical. Tell me what you're going to do. Any of you.
Anyone?
What's your product?
You know, I'll say that I was talking to Rachel last week, and I said, "Well, how do you get into TechCrunch?" And her two-word answer was, "It's easy." So now we can hear how it's easy.
I said that at lunch with the three of us, not in front of a room full of 100 very hungry entrepreneurs.
The product is ultra-light startups if you need a
Right.
product.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? And you know, to Lloyd's point earlier, it's, you know, what we sell is relationships. I mean, what I sell is 29 years. Now, granted, my staff hasn't all been there for 29 years, but I've been there for 12. Dow Jones was my client. Walt Mossberg was my client.
Do you think Mike Arrington would respond better to an email from you or directly from one of these CEOs?
Depends on who the CEO is.
Yeah.
No, it depends upon what what it says.
Right, and what
A
the email
CEO
is.
writing a stupid wooden message isn't going to mean anything.
Stir up a little trouble, Graham, because I'm
Yeah.
not having enough fun.
Trouble's good. You know, one of the things.
I was the executive editor of Inc. for many years. I've been at Worth, the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal. I know Robert Scoble used to work for me. I'm very dubious of the value of PR people. I like to hear directly from the source, and I rarely accepted calls from PR people or emails from PR people, and press releases don't work at all. And being a journalist had to do with networking within the community that I was reporting on.
But here's the thing.
And you couldn't get to me. None of you could.
Here's the thing. You take that approach, and of course it's respected. And some other editors will take that approach, and of course it's respected. But it's a numbers game. But I also think that is a very old school mentality about what's really happening out there in the social media and the ability to create a platform. Let me give you an example. I'm on the board of visitors of my college, and there was a little scandal. The details don't matter, but a teacher got mad, and a teacher blogged about it, and then a student saw the blog, and the student blogged about it, and before we knew it, the local paper was covering it, and it was all over the place. And the administration of the university had no defense because they didn't build out any type of audience. So there was no direct audience to speak to. But today, if you're out there and you're building an audience with bloggers, and you're building an audience with the media, and you're building an audience with community, and that's what PR people need to do today, that is the defense. That is the line of defense. So if you would prefer to get a CEO to email you, we're still going to write the email. We're just going to have the CEO send it to you. But most CEOs are very busy and either don't want to do that or believe in the ideology of public relations and creating intelligent, methodical campaigns.
And my guess is also, as an editor, you've probably gotten dozens, scores, hundreds of stupid calls from ill-educated, illiterate PR people reading scripts and pitching you and not even realizing until you hung up on them that the name of your magazine wasn't in C, okay? On the flip side, over the course of your career, I'm sure every now and then you got an unsolicited email or a phone call or something and said, I don't know who this guy is, but it sounds like he knows what he's talking about. It sounds like he's reads my magazine. So maybe I will take the call. I'll tell one of my junior people to do it. So a lot of that is just a vendor relationship. It's just like the same thing a PR firm or a law firm. There are many judges out there who say, anytime I get a call from XYZ law firm, anytime I know that a case is being presented to me from XYZ law firm, I know that these guys are a bunch of bozos. We represent a lot of media companies. I can't tell you how many phone calls we get from other PR people who think we're the media. They don't know who they are. And it's very simple to my staff. The rule we have is before you send that email, before you pick up that phone, you better know who the hell you're speaking to and what you're talking about. And if not, you're not going to work here. So you've got to find the right smart people to work with you.
Yeah. Let me circle that back to the DIY question. And I think Todd sort of mentioned it, but I think it's worth crystallizing. PR people can help put your company in perspective. If any of you out there think you're the only one who are doing what you're doing, go tell your mother, but you're not. And your mother will tell you you're special and that you're the only one who's doing what you're doing. But you need to understand how you fit into the business framework. You need to understand how you fit into the business environment, because that's what the media is writing about. That's what social media is talking about, and that's what the business media is talking about. In business media, go read the Wall Street Journal tomorrow. Every story follows the same virtual format. They talk about a business problem and how some company is providing the solution. And if you don't know how you fit in to that, or you don't know the three companies that are sort of like you, maybe they have a different UI, and maybe they have a different server, and maybe they have a different secret sauce, but the chances are there's some company that's pretty much like you, and the reporter's not going to see the difference in the blend, in the little nuances. And so as PR people, we work very closely with our clients on that messaging. Todd sort of talked about that a little bit, to make sure that you understand where you fit into the global framework, not only for where you're going to be from a business standpoint, but how the media is going to perceive you and how people are ultimately going to perceive you.
Ma'am, you got a question?
Well, hi, I'm B.L. Hoffman. I write What's Next blog, and I've been on both sides of the desk. You guys obviously are.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
You guys obviously are among the enlightened PR people, but I'm pitched all day long, 6 ways till Sunday. Dear Mr. Ackman, because you cover technology, and what I'm not hearing about in the whole industry is, don't send me a press release. I'm not going to read it. If I read about you on Twitter, or if I read about you in something that I follow, then I might be interested in talking to you. So I don't know why you guys are even talking about press releases.
Well, because the person that you're reading the story about, based on something you follow, was probably lazier than you are and picked it off the press release that I wrote last week.
I don't think so.
Well, look, a press release is a good place to start. This is what we do with our clients. You have to do a press release because sometimes it's just you work out the pros, the cons of this or that. Frankly, a lot of clients want a press release written. Just because they want a press release written doesn't necessarily mean that we send it out. The idea is you have a 2-page press release. X number of years ago, I don't want to date myself, you'd send out a 2-page stapled paper press release, forward it up. Then it went to a 1-page fax, right? Then it went to a 1-screen email. Now it's 140 characters. Sometimes the process of writing a press release helps you boil it down to 140 characters. I mean, what we tend to do is we'll go out and sell the story and get it picked up in legitimate media outlets and then put out the release afterwards because it helps with SEO. But a press release doesn't generate news, it kills the story. Especially now, you put out a story on Business Wire, and you call some reporter and say, hey, you see our story on Business Wire? And the reporter goes, yeah, me and 400,000 other people. It works if you're Steve Jobs. Top secret leak, coming soon, everybody prints it. But if you're an unknown company and you put out a press release wide, you've just scooped yourself. The idea is to call up a reporter and say, even though you might not know me, I follow who you are, I know what you're doing, I know you cover XYZ, we're a little company that does that, you have 5 minutes. Or whether call, tweet, however it is. And different people like different things. There's some reporters who still like press releases. You want to have every arrow in your quiver ready to fire.
Go ahead, all the way in the back.
How would you distinguish PR from investor relations, and to what extent do you coordinate with investor relations people, or not, or cover investor relations?
I would say that IR people are going to be more focused on the financial community and not necessarily on the financial press, so that's a part of it. A lot of what I've seen IR people do is focus on fund managers or different bankers, and the idea is to get on their radar screen. Sometimes it does involve using the media to do that, but a lot of it is also, direct relationships with those people.
We do both at my firm, and it's a lot of Wall Street analysts, and actually a lot of dealing with investors themselves. Companies didn't, until social media, didn't actually have that vehicle to hear from their investors. So.
And again, that's really based on message and story, because the investors are also looking for a very specific story, and you want to make sure that the people that are within the company have that story in place and are ready to spew it out to the investor community.
It's also highly regulated, investor relations.
If you're a public company, your PR team and your IR team need to be working hand in hand, because there's lots of rules and regulations public companies have to deal with, especially in terms of issuing news. And if the two aren't synced up, fine.
If you're a publicly traded company, it's funny. Unfortunately, I found over the years that no matter what business is in, everybody seems to be a PR business. A PR expert. The lawyer is handling the PR. The IR firm is handling the PR. The IR firm, a pure play IR PR firm, or IR firm, is good at doing proxies and sawbucks and compliance and shareholder communications. And we've run into a lot of it. They say, we'll write up a press release and we'll put it out on Business Wire and it'll get picked up on Yahoo Finance, and maybe it's a penny stock, it goes up for a day. There's your PR program. That's not a PR. That's not a financial media relations program. That's an IR program putting out a press release and telling you it's a PR program. So I think you either want to work with an agency that knows how to do pure play buy-sell side analysis relations as IR, and then people who also have financial media experience, because just because you're very good at handling hostile takeovers might not mean you can get your client a booking on CNBC. There's really no one, either you have a very large firm or some small firms, but anybody who says that they're a walking Swiss Army knife, they're just going to cut you.
Rachel, why don't you tell us about dealing with bloggers versus traditional media?
That's a panel in and of itself, actually. And in fact, on January 20th, Advertising Women of New York, the PR committee, is doing a panel just on that. So check out ani.org. One of the blogger revolution has changed things. Certainly, going back to what I said before about, and everybody said, really, third-party validation. Bloggers have given us hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of more third parties to validate. The challenge in dealing with bloggers is that they have an unlimited amount of space. Traditional media actually is shrinking. But if Walter Mossberg thinks I'm an idiot when I call him and doesn't want to review my product or my client's product, he hangs up on me, sometimes politely, sometimes not so politely. The blogger that I call is sitting home, kind of bored, with unlimited space, to tell the world just how annoying they might have thought that I was, or just how ineffective the client's product was. We had a case just this week where I launched a major toy client, or toy product for a client. By and large, the reviews were great, but one consumer who happened to have a blog blogged about it. And he writes a blog about national security, but he couldn't get this computer thing working for his kid, and he was really frustrated about it, and he took 2 pages to talk about how the UI didn't work. And so I spent the better part of today sort of dealing with making sure that this blogger was dealt with. As a consumer, we never would have heard about this, right? It would have gone to some 800 number that you saw on the back of the package, right? So now bloggers have more of a voice. So in a lot of ways, they can be very powerful. If they, for that one blogger, we also had probably 500 bloggers who talked about how much they love the product. But you do spend a lot of time kind of undoing, because there's this infinite amount of cyberspace for people to yay or nay your product.
Todd, wanted to ask you about branding. Switching up a little bit, and tell us why it's important.
Well, a brand is important because you want people to recognize whatever you're trying to get at as a business. We look at branding and PR as equally entwined. The interesting thing about branding is that there has to be a meaning behind the brand. And the meaning behind the brand is about, again, it goes back to the message that you create, the ideology of what you want your company to be and how you're relating it to the different publics. And I said it earlier, brands emerge based on repetition of the way that people are talking about your company, the way that people view your company. And branding is very important. I mean, it's something that has to be top of mind. We actually think that public relations and branding, in a lot of ways, need to be part of the business model and not an addition to the business model.
Good or bad branding, Carl, how do you think that'll affect a startup?
Oh, it's very important to try to have a good brand from the beginning of when you start your company. You want to be, you want to have a name that's going to be distinguished amongst your competitors, and you want to just make sure that your company is going to be able to stand out and live up to whatever the brand promise you want to create for it. I say if you're a startup and you're focused on brand, it might be the wrong place to focus. You should probably be focused on your communications story, your message, and creating a good product that people are going to be happy with, and then the brand will emerge from what people start to say about you.
Question?
Sure. In terms of branding, and getting back to the DIY stuff, I'm a startup, I'm bootstrapping, I'm 6 months or a year out from hiring one of you guys to do my PR. What can I do? What can I start to do? How can I start to build an online presence or whatever it is to lay the groundwork for when you guys come in and can take it to all new heights?
I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's, have a consistent story, start to position yourself as an expert, get to know the people who are in your field, be known as someone that other people can turn to if they have questions that your product's eventually going to solve, and start building the relationships that are going to allow you to eventually get the media coverage that we're going to help you get.
How do I do that?
For 6 months or a year out, don't do anything. Focus on your product. Because all the marketing, all the branding, all the advertising, all the hype can't make up for a crappy product. All of this stuff that we do is a megaphone. It's an amplifier. So if you're, you talk about a PR story, a car story. Does everybody here remember the launch of the search engine Cool, C-U-I-L? We're 5 guys from Google. We're going to blow everybody away. They blew their horns for months and months and months and months and months and months and months. And they made a tremendous mistake of concentrating everything on a single launch day. Here's the big day that the world's going to be changed. And A, the damn thing crashed, and B, once they got up and working, it sucked. Had they taken and now it's gone, right? Millions of dollars spent, lost, wasted. Sit in your garage, in your basement, and come up with a really good piece of code, a really good online jewelry store that sells really good jewelry. Pizza, if you're a pizzeria, that tastes really good. And if that's there, if the good stuff is there, then getting Walt, you talk about Walt Mossberg. Walt Mossberg is famous for reviewing products on their merits. So concentrate on your product, and when your product is ready and you really think it's out there, that's when you come to us. But don't worry about promoting your product until if it doesn't work and it's not ready and it doesn't taste good.
Todd,
because if you build a good thing, it'll work.
Todd, rags to riches or riches to rags. You and I talked a little bit about a company that had a really good push at the beginning, and then...
Oh, right. So I won't mention the company, but a company that I worked with that I launched in early 2000, I guess it was 2002. Everybody would know the company. If you want to ask me, I'll tell you later.
What was that company?
Yeah. Much later. It became a big brand. They were doing something in the technology space that everybody wanted to know about. They were a first mover in the space. The wind they caught the wind. They were being written about all over the place. They were getting mass adoption, and something interesting happened. So from 2003 to 2005, we created this very stellar campaign between a launch and a brand and sustaining the brand. And they got to a point where they thought they were the king of the world. The media loved them. They were all over the place. And they made a critical decision. They wanted to go for a liquidity play. And they decided that they were going to go public. And what happened was their lawyers in 2005 made the decision when they were going to go public that they wanted to stop talking to the media while they were doing this liquidity play. And it wound up being disastrous because what happened is they dominated the market so much but the technology was maturing and more people were coming into the market. So when they stopped talking to the media and servicing the media, the media got mad because they were used to coming to this company for their source. But at the same time, the CEO was running around Wall Street, and Wall Street was skeptical. So, and then you had the competitors that were coming up in the market that were now left the only ones talking. And the competitors were now kicking this major brand because they were trying to take market share. And so it wound up just progressing and progressing, and we felt it coming as the PR team, and we knew things were disastrous, and they IPO'd at $17. I think that day they went down to $2, and I don't think they've ever gone too far back up. So it just goes to show you, when you do public relations and you do create a brand, you need to defend the brand, and you need to do the things that you have to do to keep that brand equity. And not talking to the press when you've talked to the press for a long time can be dangerous.
Okay, quick fire challenge. Buzz, what is it? Give us a definition. Any one of you?
So buzz is something that catches on. Buzz is the wind. One person tells somebody else, you tell somebody else, you blast it out to 1,000 people. And you can, as a PR person, as a company, you can feel buzz. You feel buzz because not just you're out there, but because more and more people come into your world, come into your platform.
Lloyd, viral marketing.
I've always buzzed viral marketing. I go by the case studies, and if anyone's seen anything different, please let me know. You always see the same sort of thing. We wanted to do a viral marketing campaign. We wanted to do a buzz marketing campaign. We went out and hired a bunch of models, and we sent them to bars around South Beach, and they all ordered the same drink that night. Or we rented a bunch of Volkswagens and drove them around downtown Seattle. And every single viral marketing buzz, word of mouth case study that I've ever read always points to PR and media as the tipping point. Oh, the models were in the bars in South Beach, and then Ocean Drive magazine picked it up, and then thousands of cases of the vodka got bought. The Volkswagens were tying up traffic. The local NBC affiliate did something, and our traffic went up. And Gawker wrote a snarky piece, and then the next day the New York Post picked it up. So I've always just thought of buzz and viral marketing as sort of old-fashioned publicity stunts, i.e., executed in a different way. But the tipping point usually comes when it goes into the mass media, whether or not that's traditional, mainstream, online, because that just always seems to boost it up. You can have 10,000 people following you on Twitter, but a piece in TechCrunch will reach 200,000 people. So that's the tipping point, the booster of buzz marketing. It creates something that then becomes PR worthy. Or at least that's what I've seen.
I think buzz is a dangerous word because if it's onomatopoeic, which is buzz, right? And there's not a whole lot of differentiation in buzz. I went to an all-women's college, and you'd sit in a room of 300 women, and then you'd hear one male cough, and everybody would turn around, right? Because you couldn't differentiate any of us talking, because we were just talking like this and like this, and nobody really knew what anybody was saying because it all kind of sounded the same. And in a lot of ways, I think, while buzz is the ultimate goal, it's also a little bit dangerous because there's no breakaway. Nobody's being heard. It's a lot of chatter. So it's sort of a combination. I mean, it's the ultimate breakaway that you need as a result of buzz. It's a lot of people talking about you and then somebody saying something really smart. And it usually is a tipping point media. A lot of people talking about you. Think about the Snuggie, right? Everyone's how did the Snuggie get famous? Because it's such an idiot thing that a lot of people were I was at my friend's house and they had this blanket and it had 2 sleeves and you couldn't help but talk about it because it was the stupidest thing you ever heard. So a lot of people started talking about it and it started getting a lot of buzz, and the Today Show did 4 minutes on it, and CNN did 8 minutes on it, and then everybody started talking. But it was those breakaway pieces that made it sell out at Christmas.
And also there was a piece in the Times today talking about what an inferior product the Snuggie is. So sometimes what goes
doesn't
around
even keep you warm
around.
and doesn't make you look good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the Slanket is actually better.
Yes, it is.
Good.
I was going to say the Snuggie probably got those $500 ads at 2 a.m. in the morning.
For $300, yeah.
In the pink.
Pink's a much
I was actually looking at Twitter.
Did you have a question? Your hand was up.
My question is, I understand the need for a PR agency for a large business, but for a small business, an ultralight startup, why is there a need for a PR agency? Because it seems like nowadays you could just go directly to the source instead of having the middleman, the PR agent. So the more social media and technology, the more advanced we are, is there less of a need for the PR agent, or is there more of a need?
I would say that there's probably more of a need because you have to be smarter in terms of what you're telling people, and you have to really think about who you want to be talking to.
Go ahead.
And the thing, again, of the single magic bullet. Social media is a very important tool. Excuse me, I'll do a sports analogy. It's sort of like one day you play golf and you get this terrific putter, titanium, lightweight, and it's out of a sand trap. You can't tee off with a putter. Social media is not going to be the be-all and the end-all. Broadcast television isn't the be-all and the end-all. It's a mix of everything.
No, I realize that, but now you can go directly to the journalist of public television, or go to a famous blog and speak directly to the author of the blog.
Have you done that?
Yes.
And what kind of coverage have you gotten?
That's how
I've done it for certain ads that we've done. If I had more money, I would hire a PR agency.
So remember also there are big PR agencies, small PR agencies, freelancers. There are all kinds of, it's like a law firm. You can hire Skadden Arps, you can hire a guy in Brooklyn.
Plus, I can tell you, as being a national television reporter for several years, you get about 300 emails a day. So trying to pick one out, you would really have to do something to get my attention to make me reply to, there's crank emails, there's we hate you emails, there's we love you emails, and then there's actually, but it's hard to actually get to the nugget for a lot of national reporters. Go ahead.
That's true.
I wanted to share my experience, which addresses your question and a couple others. I'm the parking person, and I didn't have a lot of money because I was putting together a 4-color book. I used a publicist for my first year, and where she was extraordinary was helping me craft my message and my talking points, so I knew exactly what I was going to say. She got me my media list for the first year and then did a little bit of that the next couple of years. And she helped me learn how to craft my pitch and how to design it. Because the story was generally the same, but I understood about seasonality. You want to time, like 2 weeks ago, I did something in my newsletter about how much do you tip your parking garages. And that got picked up by CBS 880. Because the guy also knows me. So I've been in the New York Times 4 times. They've all come to me because what I've done is put myself out in the media really nicely as I'm that expert in that field. I pitched Cranes, I think 3 times before I got picked up. To me, that seemed like an eternity. I think probably to other people, 3 times is actually not that much to pitch. But where the publicist really helped was that to get that foundation together. And now I use her when I'm writing a pitch, and she'll just help me tweak it a little.
And I can also say, if you're going to contact a reporter directly, don't be nonplussed if they don't respond because there's a fire or something, or there's any number of events that will, you just have to be persistent. If you've made contact, keep trying, but realize that they won't always be able to do it. Go ahead.
I have a very practical question that on a point that Lloyd brought up. You had said before that issuing a press release could potentially crush your story, and why would a reporter want to report something that's already out there? I understand that there's an upside to doing that. You're going to get picked up. You'll get put on some Google, or you'll increase your search rankings.
Your press release will be picked up, but it's not a legitimate news story.
And it's much better to get somebody like Newsday to pick it up, because then you're going to have even better rankings, or it's going to be out there.
Because it's credible.
Yeah, that's a third party.
It's just like from an entrepreneurial perspective, I'd love to hire a PR firm. I simply can't afford it. Should I be issuing press releases, or should I be knocking down the doors of every reporter and trying to get my story there first?
Well, it goes back to what I'm sorry, I forgot your name, with the parking garage. In that particular thing, you've got a very specific niche. It's a really New Yorky niche. You've obviously got a skill and a talent for selling, both, to get up in front of a room of people and to pitch and to also speak to reporters. And you've actually had the time to chase after Cranes, for those 3 times. And remember, too, you get a piece in Cranes and a piece in Cranes and a piece of Cranes, and then the next month and the next day and the next week, and, you can get a huge piece in the Wall Street Journal, and you talk to 10 people a month later and say, hey, did you see our piece in the Journal? And they're like, no, I've never heard of you guys. It's ongoing. It's like any selling effort, so it's hard. It all depends on the story. It all depends upon what you're doing. The whole thing about the press release system is, again, think of your own media habits. Does anybody here regularly go to Yahoo News and read press releases to make decisions about anything? Restaurants, food, investments. I mean, I've seen many people turn and say, oh, well, we put the press release on PR Newswire and it got 3,000 hits. But did the last mile connect between the screen and the brain? So it is. It is. I mean, if it's a way of, and it depends if the press release is funny, if the press release is stupid. I mean, right now, if you put out a press release with your predictions for 2010, it wouldn't do anything. Might have been useful 2 weeks ago. So there are many different subtleties. It all depends on the story.
Most businesses are in the business to make money, and if you want to make money, you gotta capitalize on your corporate story. And the best way to do that is have a record of your achievements along the way, updates to your product. You raise capital. You bring on a top-notch person into your organization, right? And so you don't always put that out because, again, you're hoping to be in the New York Times, but you're trying to build a reputation, a storyline for your business. So when you go to raise capital and an investor looks and says, okay, and types you into Google, they can see the track record of your company. So not only does it organize your message, and that's another important reason for press releases, because you organize what you want to say in a very intelligent way, but you create a track record for your company, and that's important in the corporate world.
Right. And there's some very noble former journalists and current journalists in the audience, but there are as many lazy journalists who will read Yahoo News looking for a story. Who, you have a consumer gift guide editor this week who's going, oh, I've got to write a Valentine's Day story, and they just type Valentine's Day gifts into Google the same way we all do when we're sort of like scrambling February 12th for a gift for our dates. So, sometimes we provide that service, but the reason that you need that repetition is there's an old line that today's newspaper wraps tomorrow's fish. And it's true. You need a story today, and you need a story next week, and you need a story 3 weeks from now, and you need a story a month from now, and that's what growth and momentum is all about.
And traditionally, one of the biggest things you talk about in ultralight startup is that many people, especially in a group like this, you come out of a technology background. You're engineers. You're quantitative. I've had this for all the years I've been doing with PR. It's a left brain, right thing, a right brain thing. I've had CEOs say to me, of tech companies, if you pitch this reporter and this reporter and this reporter, what is going to be the outcome? And you're like, I don't know. Some could say yes, some could say no, and then I'll try something else. What exactly are you going to try? And it's like, hey, it's not code. It's not 101010. It's a little bit more intuitive. It's a little bit more
people.
You're dealing with people. You're dealing with what could be a hot story today, could be a hot story tomorrow, and also that's also a caveat emptor, because there are a lot of, you talk about lazy reporters, a lot of unscrupulous PR people out there who will take advantage of that and tell you have a great story when they should maybe say, no, you shouldn't be spending money on PR because you don't have any news story here, you don't have a message here, you have a sales message here, and spend your money on SEO or spend your money on direct email instead, because from a PR point of view, you're not going to get any reporters or bloggers to really be interested in this, not because you're a bad person, just because, the first 3 letters of the word news are NEW, and you just might not have anything new. Still might be valid.
Or you could spend your money on alcohol at Pershing Square. Panelists, thank you very much.